Thank you, Cody. Just a little side note. I had asked Cody to wear his uniform. That didn't work. But it's an honor to have it here in front of me, Cody. Appreciate your service and all of you guys. All right, now, children are dismissed, but the school-age children are going to stay in here with us this morning. This is Family Sunday. But our little ones will go out. Matt, you're too big. Go ahead and sit down. Okay. You're going to stay in here. But we are going to start this morning's message a little differently. And I need a volunteer. Grace, I guess. Come on up, Grace. By the way, Grace's mom, who is not here, correct? She's in the nursery. And she was in the United States Marine Corps as well. And Bradley in the back was also in the United States Marine Corps. So thank you, and appreciate that, Bradley. All right, we're going to start out with a game. Believe it or not, you're in church, you're going to have a game. And it's going to be kind of, we're calling it the Battle of the Sexes, Zoom In. Now, here's your job. This is going to be guys, do what? This is going to be guys versus girls, men versus women, but you get to judge who gets to answer right first, a man or woman, okay?
The girls are all in.
I'm afraid you're going to say that. I know. I'll help judge too, okay? So here, when you know the answer, stand up and shout it out. When you know what you're visualizing on the screen. It could be a thing or a person or whatever. So first one up, Lace. You might know? No, but you're close. Next one. You're close. Next one. What? French onion dip. No, that's not correct. Can of Pringles. Jamie, you're keeping score. Okay. Guys, 1. Ladies, 0. All right. Next. Here we go. You might as well go next. Ain't nobody gonna get that. Okay. Oh, who said that? Well, stand up. Ronald McDonald's right. Wow, that's incredible. Or Chris Kelton, either one. I don't know which one. Okay, next. All right. Stand up. Would you? Golf club? No.
Oh, fire detector.
You're next.
Game Boy.
Yeah, okay. Game Boy. All right, here we go. Next. I know. No, but just because you've been working on your car, no, okay.
Oh, no, I don't.
No, but that's close.
A buggy.
A what? The shopping cart. Okay, yeah, we'll give you that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in a buggy.
Piece of cardboard. Okay. Next.
A light bulb?
No. What? No. Next. No. What?
Oh, I know.
No. Next. Who said that? Yes, gas pump is correct. Next. Jamie's keeping score. That was the lady. Okay. Seventh item. Okay. Who? What'd you say? No. What'd you say? Okay, does this count? It's a cup of noodles. Okay, all right, cup of noodles. Next. Go ahead and go to the next one. Next. Yeah, a razor. Yes. Cody calls everything kind of what it is, but that's not what you call it, okay? But yes. Okay, number 8. Here we go. This be quick, all right? Next one.
A toilet.
No. Oreos is right. Matt. Number 9. Yes. You got a hair dryer from that? That is correct. Number 10. Okay, paper towel dispenser is correct. What'd you say?
The button, you push on the microphone.
Number 11, this is the last one. Or 12th, whatever. Yeah, 13th, okay. Next one's going to give it away. Yes, tennis racket. What's the score, Jamie? Give Grace a hand for doing absolutely nothing. All right, thank you, Grace. All right, here's the thing. The question is, why in the world did we do this? Some of these things that you're probably like, I can't believe I didn't know that. If I would have just, if I could have been quicker at that, I should have known that right away. Well, if I want to suggest to you this morning that the Christian life works exactly the way that this game works. And I'll explain that here in a minute. We're in our third, final session of the series called Me and My Real Family. And when I say that our Christian life works exactly this way, we don't always know how beautifully that God is working in our lives until maybe we zoom out and we wait and we're patient to see what He's doing. So that's what I mean by that. Sometimes we get zoomed in and we get hung up on maybe being too close to something or not being able to see exactly what's going on. And He's actually creating all kinds of issues in our lives. And that is basically the context of this series, that we wonder if anything will ever get better in our family. If our life will ever turn around, if I'll be able to repair this hard relationship that I'm in with somebody, this friend or my spouse or my sibling or whatever the case may be, if that person will ever get it. Will I ever be able to, if I do everything right and I do all the hard work and I do it right and they never change, will I be able to change, will be able to live and endure that relationship? So that's kind of what we're looking at, and can I take it and all this stuff. But sometimes we just have a very narrow view of God's plan in our lives when He's actually doing something very beautiful. And that would be very easy to summarize if I called on you guys to share some testimonies of your own personal lives about what you've been through, but where God's brought you from. And some of you guys are kind of in tune with what I'm talking about here. Now, one of the classical biblical stories that kind of talks about this is Joseph and his life. And, he lived a life of pain and prosperity and triumph and all kinds of stuff and trials. And in the midst of it all, he looked at God's hand and he trusted God. He trusted His sovereign purpose. So we're going to do a walkthrough, and I want you to kind of fasten your seatbelts, because we're going to run through Joseph's life this morning. Bradley, you might have to nudge Lacey, because you're not going to have a lot up here today. But kind of nudge her so she don't go to sleep, because she's going to be kind of bored back there. But just fasten your seatbelt as we run through Joseph's life to get to the point that I want to make. Joseph, basically, he gets to the point to where he wants to break the cycle that he's in. He wants to break the cycle that his family has developed over decades and generations. And basically, he said, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to do it different than what we've been used to doing it. And he's like, I'm going to break the cycle and do this because why? Because God is in my life. How many of you guys have a brother or a sister? Okay. How many of you guys are the younger of the... You know that in the eyes of your older brothers and sisters, you're evil, right? You know that, right? Okay. I know that because I are one, all right? Now, Joseph is one of the youngest brothers, and his dad, Jacob. The last two sessions of this study, we've been talking about Jacob and Esau, the sons of Isaac, and Isaac is the son of Abraham, and Abraham is the guy where God says, I'm going to take you, and everything is going to flow out of you. He was the father of our faith, basically. So he's from a very, very important family. And Joseph, who is really loved by Jacob as a young boy, he's all energetic, he's smart, he's a leader, he's just a special kid. Joseph, he soaks in all kinds of information, he's very teachable, and if you look over in the text, it says that Joseph is a handsome guy. As a matter of fact, we are told in the text that he is a beautiful man. Okay? So, he had inherited his mother's looks, and she was a beautiful lady, and all this goes on. And Jacob really, 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 really loves him. He's sort of the favorite child. And Joseph plays right into that, being the youngest, one of the youngest of the sons. There's 12 brothers in this family, so he kind of plays right into that. And we did a series not that long ago, and we talked about how Joseph would always have these dreams. And he would come up to his brothers. He didn't do himself any favors, okay? He would come up to his brothers and he'd say, hey guys, I had this dream. And we were all out in the field and we were baling hay and we were stacking all this hay up. You know what happened? The hay that all of you guys did came and bowed down to my hay. Isn't that cool? Then he comes up one time and he's like, hey guys, I had this dream last night and it was about the stars and the moons and the sun and there were 11 stars, 11 brothers, okay? There were 11 stars besides me. You know what happened? Those 11 stars came up to me and they bowed down. And he kept repeatedly coming up to his brothers and saying, one day you guys are going to worship me. You're going to bow down to me. You're going to give me your praises. And these brothers got to where they hated him. So one day the brothers are out working. The 11 brothers were out working, and Joseph was hanging out with his dad back at the place playing, I don't know, Game Boy or something, doing something. But the brothers were out there working. And it got late, and the brothers hadn't been back. And so Jacob says to Joseph, hey, where's your brothers? Go find your brothers. So he goes out, and he's looking for these brothers, and he had just been given a coat, the coat of many colors. You've heard that, mentioned in the Bible and the Gospel of Dolly Parton, okay, the coat of many colors and all that stuff. He just got this coat. So he's wearing this coat, he's going out, he's going to go find his brothers. They see him, and they're like, oh, here comes the brat. Here comes the spoiled one. And they get this idea, and they're like, let's steal his coat. Even if we have to beat him up, let's steal his coat. And so one of the brothers is like, you hide behind this rock, you hide behind this camel. When he comes up, we're going to jump him. We're going to take his coat. So here comes Joseph. They sneak up behind him. They rip his coat off of him. They beat him up. And then one of them has a stellar idea. One of them says, I got a great idea. Let's throw him in this hole. And there's a big hole there, and it's kind of like an old well or something. So they grab him, they pull his coat off, and they throw him down in this hole. So there he is, down this hole. He can't get out, and he's like, come on, guys, let me up. Dude, I'm scared. It's dark. Let me out. And they're like, oh, be quiet. You deserve this. You brought all this on. Wow, stop crying. So then there's one of the older brothers, Reuben, says, come on, guys, I'll come back later, and I'll get him out. So they leave. Reuben heads back, and he goes to work. He starts working with his dad and stuff, and so forth, so on. So Reuben comes back later to get Joseph out. He looks down the hole, and Joseph's nowhere to be found. The other brothers were there still working. He's like, where's Joseph? And they're like, well, look, we were sick of him, so there were some merchants that came by. We sold him. He's like, what do you mean you sold him? You sold him. They're like, yeah, we were sick of him. We sold him. And Reuben's like, Joseph was Dad's favorite. What are you going to do? What are you going to tell Dad? So then they start to panic, and they find this goat. They kill this goat. They take the blood of the goat. They smear it all over this coat because they had the coat that they'd taken off of Joseph. And they go back to their father, and they're like, Dad, we're out there working, and we found Joseph's coat. He must have been killed by a wild animal. So his dad, he's just distraught, and he's looking at the blood, And Jacob believes this, and he's mourning. And meanwhile, Joseph was sold to these merchants, and these merchants sell him to another group of people who, in return, take him to Egypt, hundreds of miles away from his homeland, and there they sell him again. So in just a short period of time, I want you to keep up with this, okay? Joseph has been beaten, thrown into a hole, sold 3 times, and his father thinks that he's dead. So he's sold to this guy named Potiphar, and Potiphar is the chief officer of Pharaoh's guard. So he's a pretty important guy. So he starts to talk to Joseph, and he notices something. He notices that this guy's something special. He's not like the other slave that he's had. Joseph he's very intellectual, he's smart, and he's so impressed with Joseph that he puts him in charge of his entire household. And as soon as he does this, everything for Joseph turns out to be great. He's like, dude, I've got a real job, I got a career, I'm in charge of this whole household, and he sees everything, he has all these skills, he's just a natural leader. So Joseph is in this household, and he's running things, and Potiphar has a wife that's there, and they can't avoid each other because she lives there and he works there, and so forth, so on. Well, one day of the week, they would always allow the slaves to go and worship whatever god of Egypt that they wanted to worship. But Joseph decided, I worship the one true God, so I'm not going to go. I'm going to stay here at the house. The wife notices this, and she's like, I'm going to stay here too. Remember the part I said that Joseph was a beautiful man, okay? So she's like, got this whole plan. He is not interested at all. She starts coming on to him. He runs out. She grabs his coat, rips his coat off as he's running. I don't know what it is about his coat and he's buttoning him. But anyway, she has his coat. He's running. And then her husband gets home and she's like, you won't believe what Joseph did. And she starts telling him all the story. And she says, look, I'll prove it. I still have his coat. And so Potiphar's like, I can't believe this. He's just a great guy. He's got the whole world going for him. Why would he do this? But he has to believe his wife. I told you to hang on a button up. He has to believe his wife. And so what he does, he takes Joseph, he throws him in prison, has him beaten, and has him tortured. So far, Joseph's been attacked by his brothers, thrown into a hole, sold 3 times. His dad thinks he's dead. Now he's falsely accused. He's been beaten, he's been tortured, and he's in prison. So after a while in jail, guess what happens? Guess what the guards notice? That Joseph is awesome. And they're like, this guy's, there's something special about this guy. So guess what they do? They put him in charge of the entire jail. You ever heard the cliche of, the inmates running the prison? Here's an inmate that's in charge of the whole jail because they notice that he's just such a special guy, he's such a special person, they put him in charge over the whole jail. Then one day Pharaoh gets mad at his butcher and at his baker and his butler, and he throws them in prison. They went into Joseph, they become best buds, they have pals, they become friends, and one day one of them has a dream, and they're like, I just don't know what this dream is about. And then Joseph interprets the guy's dream, and it's right on. And the butler says, look, if I ever get out of here, I'm going to go back to Pharaoh, and I'm going to tell him about you, about what a special person you are. And Joseph's like, that would be awesome. Well, not for long, the butler gets out, and guess what he does? He goes in front of Pharaoh, and he says absolutely nothing about Joseph. So a couple of years go by, Joseph is still there, he's still lingering in prison, and then Pharaoh begins to have all these dreams. This one special dream is sticking out, and he starts asking people, what's this mean? They're like, I don't know. And the butler goes, oh, wait a minute, I know a guy that's actually in your prison that interprets dreams, and he's spot on. You ought to send for him. So he sends for Joseph. Joseph comes before Pharaoh, and he's nervous because he knows if I don't get this right, he's probably going to kill me. So Pharaoh tells him the dream, and Joseph says, yes, I know what that is. It means that for 7 years, you're going to prosper. You're going to have so much wealth and prosperity, you're not going to know what to do with it. But for the next 7 years, it's going to be devastation. So Pharaoh, your job is to prepare the first 7 years for the second 7 years. And Pharaoh's like, you're amazing. He's like, you're so amazing that I'm going to put you in charge of that. So instantly, Joseph becomes the second most powerful man in the entire country. He just walked out of jail moments earlier. And he becomes this powerful, powerful man, the second in charge of the whole land. He's given this ring and all this power, and he sees through all this wealth for the 7 years, and he puts money back, enough aside for the devastation because he knows it's coming, and it does come. So let's retract just a minute. So Joseph had been jumped, thrown through a hole, sold 3 times. His dad thinks he's dead. He's been falsely accused. He'd been beaten. He'd been tortured. He'd been put in jail. He was then forgotten in jail. Stayed a few more years and betrayed. And then finally, about 13 years, his gifts were noticed by Pharaoh, and he's given this position of incredible power, second only to the king. And everything that he has said has come true. Famine came, it spread through the land, including Joseph's old hometown. I know it's taken me a while to get here, but here we go, okay? Jacob, Joseph's father, is there with the 11 brothers that are left. And he says this to them. He says, we're going to die here. He said, we had no food. He said, I want you to take this money. I want you to go to Pharaoh, and I want you to buy some food. So off they go to Egypt. So when they get there, they're going through the buying process. And guess who's there? Joseph. And he recognizes that these are his brothers, but they have not a clue who he is. So he brings them in to talk to them. So I want you to imagine this. Here stands 10 of the 11 brothers because the youngest one didn't go, okay? 10 of the 11 brothers are standing there. And they're from the land called the land of Canaan. And the best way I could explain what this would be like is this. Taking someone from where Joseph was from and sending him to where Joseph is at now. It's kind of like sending Larry the Cable Guy to a presidential luncheon, okay? They're dressed like they're dressed, or he would be dressed like he would be dressed, standing amongst a bunch of tuxedos. It's just a world apart, a whole different mentality, a whole different lifestyle. So here they are from the land of Canaan. They're already overwhelmed, and they're standing before the man who has all of the authority that controls every bit of food, really that controls life and death. And they have no idea that this is their brother. And guess what they do when they first enter the room? Remember Joseph's dreams? Yeah. They bowed down to him. And Joseph begins to remember his dream and what he had said and what he had said to them and how they had responded. And he addresses them harshly. And he says this in Genesis 42, which is now Wake Up Lacey time. There, good job. He says this. He says, where did you come from, he asked. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them, and he said to them, see, now this is where he gets to the point where many of us would say, I'm going to mess with these guys. And he's like, you guys are spies. He said, you've come here to find any weaknesses or our unprotected land. And they're like, no, my Lord, they answered. They said, your servants have come to buy food. We are all the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men, not spies. He treated you well? And they're like, no, we didn't do anything. And he's like, well, then you won't mind if I go through your bags. And they're like, no, I'm telling you, we didn't steal anything from him. They finally get to Benjamin's bag, and they pull the cup out, and brothers go, what? And Benjamin's like, whoa, no. I don't know where that came from. I did not steal that cup. So they take them back, and the Bible says they actually threw them down at the feet of Joseph. So Joseph is like, so you stole from me. And they're like, no, we really did not do. I know this looks bad, but we did not do this. And then this starts to happen. You start seeing a transition here. It says, all that we know is that we collectively have done some bad things in our past. And it's all catching up with us now. We did not do this, but we've done some bad things, and we're willing to accept the punishment that you're willing to give us. We will all be your slaves. Whatever you want to give to us, we'll accept it. And this just tears Joseph's heart. And he's like, these guys have really changed. And once again, it says that he has to leave the room. He leaves the room. He breaks down. He comes back in. He's like, no, I don't want all of you. I just want the one that stole from me. I want the youngest one that took it. He'll stay here with me and be my slave forever. Then one of the oldest brothers, Judah, says to him, something's going on here, and I don't totally understand what it is, but you're tricking us. Joseph shuts him down, and then Judah's like, look, Joseph was our dad's favorite. And when he turned up missing, it almost killed our father. Benjamin is sort of the same. And if we go back and we don't have Benjamin, you can't take him because it will kill our father. Then Judah does something amazing. And he goes, look, we know that we're guilty of some stuff in the past. We're willing to answer for that. He says, I tell you what, take me. I'm older. I'm stronger. I'll be a better slave. Spare my little brother. I'll be your slave forever. At this moment, Joseph is overwhelmed by this gesture of sacrifice for his little brother. And he can't take it anymore. And in their Hebrew language, he says this to them, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? Can you imagine the faces of those 11 brothers? Once again, they're like, what? You're who? And then instantly, fear sets in because they're like, oh my gosh, this is the guy that we threw in the hole, we beat up, and we sold 3 times and all this stuff. And we're standing, and you're Joseph? He's like, yes, I'm Joseph. His brothers are stunned. They don't know how to answer. They don't know what to say. They're nervous. They're afraid he's going to have them killed. They fear for their lives. And then Joseph begins to calm them in brotherly love. And he says this to them in Genesis 45, verses 4 through 8. So then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. When they had done so, he said, I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. And now, do not be distressed. Do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. For 2 years now, there has been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there's going to be no plowing, no reaping. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you the remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but it was God. I read this, and I've read this several times this week and preparing this, and I'm like, really? This is your response? Are you kidding me? I mean, here they are in front of you. I want to go back, okay? They threw you in a hole. They beat you up. They stole your coat. You were sold 3 times beyond that because of them. You were tortured in prison. You were falsely accused. And here they are, and your answer is basically this: it's all good. There are some things that we have to take away from this morning. And first of all, I want you to notice this. And we have to ask a question. How did Joseph, how did he do this? How did he allow his emotions to be corralled? Because be honest, you want to get even. I had to endure for 20 years this punishment because you guys threw me in that stupid hole. And here you are. We want in our lives, in this life that we live in, this world that we live, we want revenge, and we want it now. The quicker the better. I sent a shirt. I thought about you, Chris Kelton, the other day. I might buy it for you. It said this. It said, prayer connects you to God. But I can get you there a lot quicker if you mess with my daughters. Okay? We want that. We want revenge. And that's just human nature. So how in the world did Joseph, how was he able to do this? Why not just throw him in a hole for 20 years? Why did Joseph choose to break the cycle? I want you to notice this first. It took him a while to get it right. Okay? The first time they come, he throws them in jail. The second time they come, he frames them, he sets them up. He's testing them to see basically if anything has really changed before he's willing to give them a chance, before he's willing to give them a break. When someone has hurt you, guess what? It's okay to have these conversations to see if they've changed. Perhaps they're trying to re-enter your life after years or whatever, and you're like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there again. I don't know if I want to put myself back out there again in their life. Let's just see, and maybe nothing has changed. Perhaps you still have to forgive in order to be healthy to you, but re-engaging in that relationship is still not healthy. But ultimately, notice this. Joseph decided not to keep a list of the horrible stuff that had happened to him and who did it. He chose to walk with God and not to keep asking, hey God, did you forget me? Where am I in all of this? Some of you guys, the early years of Smoky Mountain Youth Conference, we had a man that came and spoke. I actually have his book. His daughter, his 12-year-old daughter, was molested by their next door neighbor. And the next door neighbor was arrested and then charged and sentenced to like 9 or 12 years in prison, something like that. And when he was speaking to all the teenagers there, he said, everybody asked me, he said, how do you stand living next door to this guy's family? Because the other guy had a family and kids too. And he said, well, he said, you know what helps me? He said, every Saturday I go over and I mow their lawn for them. Like, what? This is the guy that molested your daughter? He said, yeah. He said, but I go over and I mow their lawn for them. I check on them. Say, you guys okay? You need anything? And we're like, there's something wrong with you? Here's what's wrong with him. He's infected by the love and grace of Jesus Christ. This is what happens here in this story. Joseph doesn't go back and make a list of the horrible stuff that happened to him. And, he's not like, hey, God, did you forget me? Instead, he trusted the process and decided to keep his eyes on God. And he's like, I'm going to keep my heart right. And when that moment's come that I have to address that I was beat up, I was thrown in the hole, I was sold 3 times, I was falsely accused, I was tortured in prison, and everyone expects me to be bitter and to lash out, I'm going to do the exact opposite because I'm going to speak on God's behalf. I'm going to break the cycle. What an incredible example of the power of God in someone's life. He could have not done this on his own. Instead, he chose to trust in God and to break the cycle that's been in his family for generations of people lashing out. Remember, we talked about Jacob and Esau. Jacob had to leave. Esau, his brother, was going to kill him. And Jacob's like, Joseph's like, I'm going to stop this madness. I'm going to stop this dysfunctionality that's in my family. And it's interesting because Joseph, during this time, he had his own son, and his own son's name was Manasseh. And Manasseh in Hebrew means God has made me forget. So every time that he saw or dressed his son, he was reminded that he was working through this sting in his life. And he was working to forget what had happened to him. One of the greatest truths that proves that we really trust God is when we refuse to harbor bitterness or anger towards others when we are in conflict with them. See, blaming others and shifting blame really, it just works for us. Remember when I was growing up, there used to be some of you kids don't know what this is, an album, okay, by Bill Cosby called To My Brother Russell with Love. And he talks about when he was laying on his bed and him and his brother were like water fighting, throwing water balloons, and his father comes and kicks the door in, and his father's like, who done this? Because the beds are wet and everything. And he's like, this man, Dad, he jumped through the window, and he came through the window, and he threw this bucket of water on us, and he jumped back out the window. We're always wanting to blame somebody. We blame the dog. Dog did it. You know, we always want to blame someone else. So here we have Joseph. And he's not blaming others. He's not shifting blame. And if you notice, his brothers, when they fessed up, they didn't blame. They didn't say, well, you know, we've done some really bad things in our life because we had this little bratty brother that we didn't like. They didn't say that. They said, we've done some bad things. They didn't try to shift the blame. They didn't, or Nathan didn't say the other ones. He didn't say, I didn't throw them in the hole. They did. No, they collectively took the blame for their wrongdoing. And that proves to Joseph, these guys have really changed. Listen, the sooner that we learn that we are not in charge of our lives, the better off we're going to be. The more that we are able to zoom out and take the time to see the big picture that God has for us, the more that we'll be able to experience God's provisions for us. And we realize that His terms of life are better than our own. Here's a secret. God knows what He's doing. Listen to this verse in 1 Peter. It says, when they hurled their insult at Him, meaning Jesus, He did not retaliate. When He suffered, He made no threats. Instead, He entrusted Himself to Him who judges justly. He Himself bore our sins in His body on the cross so that we might die to sins and live for righteousness. In this moment, in that little moment, Joseph responded to that God had a plan that He was working. He may not see it. He may have not zoomed out, but he partnered with God in this, and by doing that, he broke the cycle. Now I know that some of you guys might be saying, "Okay, Barry, you know I hear what you're saying, and that's great for little Bible boy Joseph. He was awesome and all that, and that's great, but I'm not him because I want satisfaction. Because you ain't going to believe what my so-and-so said to me or what so-and-so did to me. I want, if you knew my story, maybe you would change your mind." Here's what I would say to that. Whether or not you or I get to see it and be whole again ourselves with that family member or whoever it is that's hurt you in the past, you can be reassured and you can know this. If you're obedient to what God's called you to do you can be reassured and know that God is as well challenging their heart. Now, when Joseph puts them in jail for 3 days, he talks to them again. He puts them in jail and he goes back to talk to them again. And they start to have this conversation amongst themselves. And it goes like this. They said to one another, surely to goodness we're being punished because of what we did to our brother. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we wouldn't listen. That's why this distress has come on us. And like I said a moment ago, at this moment, they took responsibility for what they did. They didn't blame their father for treating Joseph any better than the more he treated them. They didn't say Joseph was a brat. Basically, they said, we did it. But what you and I want is for those to come to us and to grovel and to say, you know all that stuff I said about you, and all that stuff that you said about me, all that stuff you said about me is true, and it's all on me. We want those that hurt us or say things to come to us, and that would make us happy. That would please us, because that would allow them to be showing maybe a little bit of whatever. You get a little bit of judgment on your side when something like that happens. That's what we want. But here's the thing. Whether or not that happens, you can be assured if they have done wrong and that you have not done the thing to make it right, or they have not done the thing to make it right, they become the victim to the stress. They become the victim to what they've put you through. They feel the same thing that you felt by not handling it in the first place. Remember we talked about last week about how we bury things and we just bury it and bury it and bury it, but sooner or later it's going to pop back up. It's going to be an issue until you handle it. If you're going to bury something, you better make sure it's dead, okay? And you have to kill it, and you have to kill it by doing exactly what's happened here. You confront it, you handle it in Christ-like manner, and you can walk away and say, okay, it's done. But they fessed up and they're like, we did it. Now, I'll tell you that you always hear the cliche of just give it time and it'll be better. Time does not always fix things. It doesn't. It just doesn't. It helps sometimes, but it doesn't always fix it because it resurfaces again eventually. And the last thing I want to say to you is this. Hurt can be paralyzing. But remember, just one little choice can break the cycle. One little choice can break the cycle. And this little choice can turn your inner being closer to being a heavenly creature or a hellish creature. I don't know any other plainer way to put that. It's your choice what direction you choose. Joseph came from the most important family in the Bible. Joseph decided to make a choice to reconcile a family that was in total distress and turn back to where God intended it to be. He kept that promise alive. Judah, his brother, and in the moment when he stepped forward and said, take me, spare my little brother, take me, he kept the promise alive. You and me have been drafted into that same promise. And what I'm asking of you today is this. What choice is it that you're going to make to keep the promise alive? I close by saying this. As we read in 1 Peter, Jesus, instead of retaliating, chose to give grace. And because of him becoming a victim, listen to me, because of him becoming a victim, you don't have to be a victim. He's already paid the price. He's already issued the sacrifice. He's already shed the blood. He's already suffered the pain. You and I do not have to be a victim. You're only a victim if you play the victim's role. But if you're a follower and a believer in Jesus Christ who died on the cross and he shed his blood for your sins, you're a victor. You've been claimed by the one that controls life and death. I'm going to ask you to bow as we close. Bow your heads and just kind of get in your own little zone there for a second. And as I stated in the beginning of this series, no one in this room comes from a perfect family. But the other side of that is this. Everyone in this room has an opportunity to follow a perfect Savior. And if you're here this morning and you can relate to Jacob or Joseph or maybe his brothers or maybe Esau, whatever the case may be, and you're like, man, I've got this person in my family that there's just an issue. Maybe you're the person in that family as well. I don't know. But you're here and you're saying, this message absolutely talks to my soul, talks to my spirit, and made me aware of maybe how I need to change my heart and change my mind. If that's you and you're saying, yeah, this hits home, I want to ask you to pray for me. If that's you, just stick your hand up. Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Well, I pray for those that raise their hand. They're saying, and if we were all honest, we would all say we're all spiteful, we're all impatient, we all want revenge, and we all want it our way. I made the comment that the sooner that we realize that we're not in control of our own lives, the better off we're going to be. Because we need to turn our life over to Christ. Well, I have. I've prayed to receive Him. That's not what I'm talking about. For some of you it may be, but for many of you, by following Him, by modeling Him, by imitating Him, by mirroring His image, that's what we need to do. Not just the things that we like of what He tells us to do, but even the things that we don't understand, and we need to zoom out and see the big picture that God has in our life. Father, I pray right now for those here that raised their hands and they said, man, this penetrated my heart. I'll lift them up to you that you would give them the blueprint of what they need to do to successfully change whatever it is, maybe in their life or maybe in someone else's life that's close to them or should be close to them, that maybe you give an opportunity for them to share grace with them or whatever the case may be. You know the situation, not I. And Lord, I pray for those here this morning that maybe have never really humbled themselves and asked you into their life. I pray that before they leave this building today, that they would leave a changed person, a new creation. Lord, I pray for each of us that you'll help us all to be heavenly minded and heavenly hearted. Move us a little closer to you every day. Help us to stay stride and stride with you every day, God. We love you and we trust you. Lord, help us to image you in our lives to others, to where they see you and they hear you in the actions that we do and the things that we say. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. I ask you to stand if you would. If you're here this morning, this is our invitation. If you'd like to come down and pray by yourself, that's great. Just come on by either side. You can kneel down and pray. If you'd like to pray with me, I'd be glad to pray with you. Maybe you need to come forward for salvation. I don't know. Or maybe come forward for a follow and believer's baptism, whatever the case may be. Whatever God's laid on your heart, now is the time to respond in the way that He's asking you to respond. Invitation is open.